play. And another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo's dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I am Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart. Dylan Burkhart of UM Hoops. It is 9:30 in the morning on Friday. I wouldn't categorize either of us as well rested, but it's that time of year, man. You just keep it going. What do they say? Shovel and coal, or whatever expression these bullshit coaches like to use sometimes.
I can't keep track, but I guess the morning after podcast doesn't quite bring the same fire as the night of 3 beers in hand podcast, I got to say.
Like the pure adrenaline plus 3 beers podcast are peak moving screen postseason. The 9:30 in the morning, both of us sucking down coffee in hooded sweatshirts.
Not quite the same energy.
This is the flip side. Yeah.
We
are here to commence the postmortem of Michigan State. Not really. We pretty much got into everything on Michigan in our last pod about setting them up for their early round games here. So this will just be Michigan State. What went wrong against UCLA? What went wrong against UCLA speaks to what went wrong in the season. So it all kind of correlates. But before we get into it, over on The Athletic, we have $1 a month for the first 6 months special. I would strongly encourage you to go find one of my stories, click that link, and then subscribe, because that's how Daddy pays for his golf club. So make sure I'm getting that credit. But this is, in all seriousness, an awesome time to subscribe to The Athletic. I got a story up there from last night on John Beilein as a coaching candidate. I have a long-form story from yesterday morning on the hiring process of Juwan Howard, and of course, a recap of that Michigan State UCLA game. Dylan, can you tell folks what's on UM Hoops? But more importantly, they got a couple hours here if they can get in on that your tournament guide.
Yeah, so go pick up the tournament guide, and even if you pick it up today, it'll be updated throughout the tournament. So you can go and get a UCLA BYU preview. You can go get every new game that's scheduled. A preview will pop up there, and I'll be tweeting those out. So it's not like it just turns to dust when the tournament starts. So make sure to check that out, cvbguide.com.
You knocked that down to like $15 though, too, right, for a last chance? Yeah,
there's a promo code you can use, last chance, $15, easy. I guess it's not really. I'm over here trying to say it is the last chance. It isn't the last chance, but what are you going to do? There's good stuff in there, so check that out. I know I have to go finish a bracket before noon today, so I'll be looking in and diving into it a little bit as a user. Over on UM Hoops, we have a preview of Texas Southern. Really kind of went all in on Mount St. Mary's winning that game, and then started to preview them. That didn't work so well. But Texas Southern preview is up. Some good stuff. They have transfers from basically every school across the country, and it's an interesting team. You can read all about that, and we'll have I believe there's a 50% off sale that should be up there if you're on the fence of getting a new subscription. And that's about it. We'll be covering. The fun starts today, so it's all steam ahead from here.
All right. Well, let's get into it. 86-80 overtime final. UCLA advances as the 11th seed in the East region. Michigan State packing up, heading home from West Lafayette via Indianapolis. Kind of an emotional roller coaster. Kind of an ugly game. Kind of, it's at other times not an ugly game. There was times when, I thought Michigan State played with a sharpness to it, and there were other times where it looked totally disjointed and disconnected. There were times they played with great energy. There were other times they were flat-footed, and we can go back and forth on all of this. And none of it surprising though for anyone that watched this team for the entirety of the year. I feel like a lot of people probably got baited into thinking that 3 top 10 wins over the last couple of weeks of the year meant Michigan State, quote, found it, or quote, clicked, or something like that, or was ready to go on a run. I mean, I don't think anybody that watched the team all year was like really buying in on like MSU as a Sweet 16 team. But what are kind of your general thoughts?
Yeah, that Michigan State figured it out narrative seemed to be much more tied to kind of national people, I think, who just see scores on a scoreboard rather than have actually been watching this team every game. Like, I think anyone knows it was a testament to Michigan State's toughness that they won these games, but it wasn't like they played 6, 7, 8 games of beautiful basketball and like, were just rocking and rolling. And it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the team we thought they were all the way. It was, even when Michigan State won, I feel like the reaction from Tom Izzo after games was, we are dealing with the hand we're dealt and we're getting by and we're playing hard as hell and figuring out how to win these games, right? It wasn't like, man, we're awesome. It was, I mean, even last night, I think he said something that we've said in the podcast. There's just not a lot of margin for error with this team.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, you're going to have to get a maximum performance out of Aaron Henry, and then you're going to have to get everyone around him to play really well. And there's not enough players around him who play really well for 40 minutes every night. And that's going to lead to consistency issues kind of along the way. And I think you're playing so many guys, it's just hard to be dialed in, locked in, perfect for 40 minutes. And that was what was so frustrating about this game, where you can see, man, for 8-9 minute stint, like this is all, it looks great. This is what it's supposed to be. Like a team, like you're like, oh, can they beat BYU? Can they do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just all sort of unravels in 2 minutes, and then you're back to square one. And then it's just sort of that yo-yo effect of how do we get to a point where we can play a consistent 40 minutes? Because that was really hard for Michigan State for really most of the year. Yeah.
I mean, I think I tweeted it after the first 5 minutes where I was like, man, great start for Michigan State. Now I'm really curious to see them start to get into the rotation and what they're going to do. And if, because it really is, it's like any given time, you just have no idea how the combinations are going to work or play together. Like, how fitting was it that the regulation ended with, just some kind of, I don't even know, like long sigh shot attempts by Rocket Watts, and Izzo deciding to go with AJ Hoggard for the final 2.5 minutes, right? Like, it was just like, of course, this is how, this thing gets wrapped up.
That was the final 2 minutes of overtime.
Right? Of overtime, I'm sorry.
Because Watts had the shot late, like that shot late in the, and I know they left him open, but the shot late in the first half was just a backbreaker. And then he took another one early in the second half and just had to pull the plug. But it's kind of the give and take we've been talking about. AJ Hoggard's not ready to play in a game like this.
Correct.
And so you need Watts, but Watts isn't going to he's going to make plays like that. It's a high risk situation where you're not going to get sort of this floor manager point guard that's going to just do exactly what you want. You're going to get kind of a loose cannon at times. And at times that leads to some big shot making. I mean, he basically put the team on his back and won the game against Michigan that got this team into the tournament. And then at times it leads to that. And it was just, I think that's really where you start and look at this team and like never figured out point guard play. How are you really going to be a great, consistent team when that's what you're dealing with? And there was just never an answer there.
Yeah. I mean, the tough pill was the losing the same way over the course of a year is something that can just drive people crazy, fans crazy, coaches crazy, the players crazy, right? And to have like the thing that cost you a game in December, not cutting out on a free throw box out, be repeated in a win or go home scenario like this is just, it's certainly unacceptable in a program like Michigan State for sure. And, all credit to Aaron Henry for everything that happened over the last month of this year. Like, that team showed major balls. That team showed heart, and Aaron Henry was right.
That team was Aaron Henry. Yeah,
but
like he did
but
that.
It was him. And on that free throw attempt, 37 seconds left, up by 3. And he just kind of walked out into the middle of the lane as that shot attempt goes up. It ricochets off the front of the rim, goes right back to the shooter, and turns into a second chance opportunity that turns into a 3-point play that leads to overtime. I mean, that is just such a brutal way for this thing to end. It's just for all of Michigan State's deficiencies, like a lot of their problems were self-inflicted and were avoidable.
Yeah, and I think if you lose games, a lot of times you are who you are, right? If you lose games on stuff like that in December or January, I think that Purdue game was early January, then you're probably going to lose games like that again, right? See, like you can't just change who you are as a team. I also think sometimes it was a weird bounce. It came flying back off the rim in a really like line drive way that you didn't really ever see with a free throw. So that kid was living his best life in that game. He missed the dunk and then made a three, and then he missed the free throw and then made a and one. Like that. Sometimes you just have to say, well, what the hell is going on here? Because that's two ridiculous plays in a game that would have completely come down to one of those plays going the other way, right? So it's almost a tough break as much as it's just easy to say, oh, if you would have boxed out the shooter, but just what about every other play that Aaron Henry made throughout that whole game?
Oh, no doubt. I'm just saying, like,
right?
It's just that thing of not even like doing the little things, but like just staying. There's just been times this year where like there's just these kind of mental gaffes that you just have seen from this group that's just really kind of unexpected from Michigan State. And I mean, Henry just didn't box anyone out on that play, and you just don't expect that from him, of course, but let alone from any Michigan State player playing on March 18th of a year. Like, yeah, you are who you are, but teams improve and change things and address things over the course of a year. And that's what the point of the whole regular season is. And that's the beauty of college basketball, right? Is that in college football, when you have those learning lessons early in the year, well, it ends your season and you don't get to advance, and in Michigan or in NCAA basketball, you can get better and better and better and better. So,
yeah, my point is just, basketball is such a cruel game where, like these games are single elimination and they come down to plays like this and they just happen, right? You can't win every play, and you can try and you can win. Even the best teams win 98% of plays or whatever. And it just, that's what it comes down to, right? Like all of a sudden it's over in a flash and you're left trying to figure out really what happened in a game where you controlled the game for 39 and a half minutes and then somehow lost in overtime. So that's just the sport. And I mean, that's what we love about the sport, and it's what makes March Madness so great, but it's just brutal on the other side.
What did you think of Michigan State's kind of late game offense, late game play calling? Like, it was obvious, right, to everyone that, whatever you designed had to go to Aaron Henry. But even still, there was a certain, I don't know, stagnance, is that the right word, to everything that they did. What did you see?
So I guess the last shot I had no problem with. I mean, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to just isolate. They almost went too early.
Talking about the last shot of regulation, yeah?
Yeah, we talked about I guess we didn't talk about it, but the Mike Smith shot in the Michigan-Ohio State game, they should have gone quicker because they were down one. Henry, the number one goal in that play is to just get the last shot, and he actually went a little early to do that because UCLA got a pretty good look after he missed. I think it's hard. I mean, Michigan State's offense late in games has been stagnant. It's been sort of dribble the clock out and let Henry work. It just seemed to be the play that I keep coming back to is that Watts shot, which was really kind of a scramble play. And so I get shooting it. It wasn't close to going in. So the whole game felt a little disjointed as far as offensive flow, but I think Michigan State was doing a good job getting after on the offensive glass. And there were like plays that they were just so close to getting over that hump, I think, and finishing the game. So I don't really think the offense lost in the game. Is there something you saw that bothered you with it?
No, I guess it just felt like maybe it's because watching Aaron Henry, like he seemed dead, I thought, at the end of that game too. And it was kind of difficult watching the ball just go to him. Everyone stand there kind of watch him. And, like, I don't know if there was a different way that you could line it up for him to get the ball. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you can't have anyone else shoot the ball there, right? I know at one point Henry had like Langford open in the corner, but Henry's got to shoot the ball down the stretch in that game. But it was still just kind of like, I don't know. It just seemed so strained and everything that they were doing. But you're right. I mean, it was defensively The defense is what lost this game. I mean, Michigan State did enough offensively to win, and at times in the game were playing as well as they have all year. I thought they kind of flatlined at the end, but that does happen. But what did they give up points per possession in the second half?
I don't have the second half, but for the game it was 1.19, which is a big number.
It's up there. It's up there.
And really, for our boy Mick Cronin, it was just some dumb luck because Cody Riley gets in foul trouble. I guess, apparently UCLA people were saying they haven't gone small all year. And then they go with this small lineup, and it just blows the game open, and Michigan State can't really figure out how to guard it. And that was what changed the game. And I don't think that ever happens if Cody Riley doesn't get into foul trouble.
Right.
Most of that first 20, 25 minutes of the game, UCLA was just trying to pound the ball into Cody Riley, have him go one-on-one against Marcus Bingham, and it wasn't working, right? And that small lineup opened things up, let him drive, and that changed the whole game. And I mean, obviously, Jaquez and Juzang had basically career nights. They were making all sorts of shots. They were driving, getting downhill. So credit to them, but it was sort of dumb luck that I think they stumbled into that as a team. Yeah,
Jaquez and Juzang went to combine 9 for 17 in the second half, and a stat broadcast has UCLA at 1.517 points per possession in the second half. That's a lot. They went
that's a big number.
6 for 10 on the 3-point line, 9 for 11 from the free throw line. And yeah, I mean, the mismatch problems, just Michigan State just couldn't really find any kind of combination that worked against the matchups that they had. And even sitting there watching, I wasn't exactly sure of this is the obvious switch that they need to be making in the personnel on the court to address this. It just seemed like UCLA was just going right at them, and they just didn't really have a defensive answer.
Yeah, I mean, and we said, I think, on the last pod, we also said it was going to be a rock fight, but UCLA has talent, and it's just they haven't played that well. And Juzang, those guys, Michigan State has one really good big wing, Aaron Henry. They don't really have a whole slew of them to match up with a team that really wants to spread you out and drive, right? You have Rocket is a little smaller. Langford's good. He was banged up, but he's not really a lockdown defender for a 6'6" slasher. Right. And then you're playing Malik Hall at the 4, maybe more Gabe Brown, but I thought Gabe Brown actually played his ass off and played pretty well. So it's just a tough matchup when Michigan State wants to go with someone like Hauser at the 4, and you just can't do it against a team that's going to spread you out and drive like that.
Right.
Most of what UCLA did was just get an ISO mismatch and then just go downhill and score at the rim, which, I mean, really, you can't do that much to prevent that except play better defense.
Right. When teams fall ass backwards into having to play a small lineup and find success, how well do you sleep at night?
I just rip a shot and party, and I'm just ready to go. That's what I root for in basketball. That's about it. Especially when I can find the reaction of people why didn't you do this all year? Because I'm all the way in for it. And especially, I mean, to be fair, if you can make it the whole season and use it in the tournament, it's a strategy. But I don't think that's what they're doing.
I don't think that was. I think
it
that
was
anyone
just dumb luck and
had that long-term game plan.
Sometimes that's what it comes down to, though.
Yeah, if UCLA was keeping that in the back pocket, maybe break it out before you lose 4 straight to end the year and nearly miss the NCAA tournament. So I wouldn't say that was it. All right, you mentioned Gabe Brown. We got to talk about the thing at the end of the first half, right? So I assume everyone saw it, but essentially, final possession of the first half, Gabe Brown and Malik Hall, miscommunication on a switch. 2 guys go with one body. Leads to an open 3-point. Was that Juzang?
No, it was a foot on the line, long two.
A lot of that in this game. A lot of long twos. For as much as you were enjoying this small ball UCLA, you're also dying inside with the amount of long twos in this game. But final possession leads to a wide open shot for UCLA. They can it right at the horn. The funny thing is, as the ball is at mid-flight, you can see Gabe looking at the bench, realizing what just happened. Shot goes down, right? Malik Hall barks at Gabe Brown for missing the switch. Izzo barks at Gabe Brown for missing the switch, and Gabe Brown immediately starts firing back at anyone and everyone. And it went from 0 to 10 real quick. They start going up the tunnel at Mackey Arena. Izzo gives a pretty good grab on Gabe Brown's arm, pulls him back. That's certainly something that like people who watch Michigan State are like, I've seen that before. And people who watch nationally are aghast. What is right is certainly in the eye of the beholder. We'll get into it, but and then they continue to kind of bark their way up the tunnel, and certainly great fodder for television and for social media. I mean, that is just like,
I loved how
perfect.
They came back from the commercial. All of a sudden they had another camera like further up the tunnel where they had the extended footage. They were ready to go with that, without a doubt.
So, yeah. And then, I thought far more concerning with the fact that there was this spat at the end of the first half was the fact that Michigan State opened the second half by being outscored 12-4. But for the purposes of the drama, that was something that's always going to raise eyes. And like, I mean, personally, I'm a little uncomfortable seeing stuff like that. You know what I mean? But it's not the way that I would want to be coached. It's not the way that, someone that I was close with, I'd want to see them coached. But, it's also like, I know a ton of people in basketball that just have absolutely no problem with that, with, a grown man grabbing another grown man's arm and saying, I'm talking to you, and interacting that way, right? With a level of fire and with a level of whatever you want to call it, right? I don't know if the answer's in the middle. I don't know if the answer's on one side or another. The big issue is it's a college coach grabbing the arm of a player who is, some people will call a kid. I do not consider Gabe Brown a kid, but I don't know, man. These things are always so gray to me. And it's, people immediately jump to like, oh, who is that old asshole coach from Ohio State? Woody, what's his name?
Woody Hayes.
I was going to say Woody Page. Woody Hayes punching that kid. Like, I don't. So I do not see that here, but what do you got?
I don't have a big problem with it, and I feel like it's pretty. What you're getting. So people and here's the two things I would say. One is, I assume everyone says it's no big deal because if this is what you see on national TV, I just imagine what you're seeing in practice and how that is enforced. So that's the first thing. Second is, like, even if you don't have a problem with it, I think the potential issue is that you don't get to decide, like from Michigan State's point of view or Tom Izzo's point of view, you don't get to decide what's okay forever. And all of a sudden what used to be okay might not be okay in public opinion. And I think that's really the risk as far as like, this is what we've done for 20 years or whatever. Well, all of a sudden, like, things change in how people perceive things, especially over the last decade. So things like this, it just seems like we get closer and closer to this kind of line of, if we're talking about it all the time, I don't think it's really something you want people talking about, right? So that's what I would worry about is, does that perception continue to shift? And all of a sudden you're left, well, like, I used to be able to do this. This is how it was okay. And now maybe it's not. Like, that's the worry. And personally, like, if I was playing, I don't really have a problem with, like, when I played football, my coach would smack me upside the head. I didn't really care. But I responded to that, I thought. So I would be fine playing in that kind of system, but I just don't know that the people playing in it or coaching in it are the ones who are going to make the ultimate decision of what's okay and what's not.
Right. I think you bring up a great point about just how perception changes, whether you want it to or not, or whether you think it's right or wrong. Like, and I don't know if it's just because we're living in it, but like when you said how much it's changed in the last 10 years, it almost seems like
10 months,
even in the last, 2 years has been even more so than in the last 10 years. And you know what? And the next year is going to probably be even more dramatic than that. So it's like, the idea that Izzo is going to have some kind of like, I'm changing this up,
no,
is not happening. So, it is going to be a really, this is going to be Michigan State basketball under Tom Izzo. And I have no idea how that ends, but this is what it is. So people can continue to have the controversy over it or say, you know, what is right and what is wrong. But like, you can't ignore the fact that people still want to play for him. You can't ignore the fact that the alumni say what they say about it.
Leaves that program and says, "Oh, this was bullshit. I was getting treated like maybe it's just like." But you don't see that from anyone really. People haven't really transferred, which is telling in itself over the
very much so.
However long. But the fact that you don't see that at all means that people. I don't think it's like an issue in that sense. I just think that it's more of a perception thing that's the concern, because that's a lot harder to control. But it's not like people are like mass exodus, like we're not dealing with getting yelled at by Tom Izzo. We can't take it anymore. Like that's not what's going on. So right. I do agree. Like people go, like you choose what school you go to for different reasons, and people of all from different places choose different programs for different reasons, and coaches have very different styles. I don't think one style is right or wrong. But as things change, like name, image, and likeness and all this other stuff and player empowerment, and it's just going to be an interesting time, I think, for a lot of this stuff, as far as it's not just this. It's like so many parts of college sports, right?
Yeah.
Like schools that don't let freshmen talk to the media in football or something like that. Like that shit's going to change because it's ridiculous, and because people are they're going to be losing opportunities by doing that. Right. So I don't think it's just sort of this player coach relationship stuff. It's just everything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it'll be curious to see. Yeah. I do think there will be some departures at Michigan State.
Yeah, but that's not because of this.
No. Hold on. Let me finish my point. Like, there's a difference between departures and then guys immediately talking to, like, you see our Cincinnati story yesterday, right? Like guys ready and willing who are leaving Cincinnati to talk about, you know, whatever the dealing with the coach and some culture stuff and blah, blah, blah. And just like general kind of discontent over how they're treated there. Like if Michigan State has departures, like, and you see that stuff, yeah, we can read into it, but like, I'd be fairly surprised, frankly, being around this program for the time that I have. Like, Michigan State recruits kids who want to play Michigan State basketball, and this is what Michigan State basketball looks like. So, you know, like the amount of times that like a guy like Aaron Henry has been goaded into trying to, you know, say that he has felt mistreated or whatever it might be, right? And has just been like, nah, man, like this is what I want. This is how I want to be coached. This is what I'm here for. Like, you can't ignore that.
I agree.
You know, there is not everything needs to be the way that you want it to be. And like I said, like, I don't think I would respond to that coaching, right? Like, that's just not my style. But so I probably wouldn't play for Tom Izzo. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way it is. But, you know, I mean, I've known Aaron Henry's dad for a long time. That dude is like, this is exactly how I would coach him. This is exactly how he wants to be coached. And, you know, okay. That's for you then, man. That's fine. You know, like there's nothing wrong with with firmness and accountability and raising your voice at people and yelling. Like, I'll yell. I've yelled in old newsrooms. I've been yelled at in old newsrooms. Like, yeah, whatever, man.
The grab is the thing you don't want to see. I think that
you don't want to see that. I agree.
And that is what's going to get people talking about it. And that is like what can shift perception, I would say. I think that's just like the line you don't want to cross. Just as far like, I don't have a big problem with it, but just as far as how it's going, that's what turns it into a story, right?
Yep.
If you're just if you're just yelling at someone, like that happens all the time, and there's coaches who do that, and then when their teams are bad, then everything goes south. But I don't know. So I also think, I don't know. I just think Michigan State as a whole program, it's just so much easier to fix problems in the off season, right? Like it's like you're all summer or all season, you're trying to fix a leaking boat that just keeps sinking more. Now you can just build a new boat. You can start over, clean slate. Guys leave, guys come. It's just, this whole season, they've been kind of behind things, trying to catch up. And I think now you start fresh. It's all brand new. And I think that's just huge for a team that has a season like this, where, yeah, you kept the streak alive, but no one's happy about it. You just need to rip everything apart and just say, okay,
totally agree.
Where are we? What are we going to do next? And I think that probably started 6 a.m. this morning. And now like you're moving forward.
And you have a really, really good 3-man group of freshmen coming in. Like, really good recruits, right? I like this class. It can address some things immediately. But at the same time, like what you're talking about, how they just never really had anything. It started right at the top. It started right at point guard. They never had an answer there. First and foremost, right off the top, they have to address the point guard spot. And you got to bring in something that is just has a level of reliability that you kind of know what you're getting there. And because just going in with a complete unknown is not going to work. Let me ask you this. What foundational pieces do you like the most for 2021-22 Michigan State?
I like the recruiting class. I honestly think that's where you have to kind of start this. I really see.
I think it needs to be a total change, right?
Yeah, and the good thing is there's no one, like, we're just going to assume for this conversation that Aaron Henry's going to the NBA.
Yes.
Just to make that clear. So you lose Henry and Langford. You're not building your team around Rocket Watts. Maybe he's on the team, maybe he's not on the team. Mm-hmm. And basically everyone else is kind of in this 15, 20 minutes a game phase. It's not like they've proven. So I think it's okay. We're not building around anyone. We're going to bring this really good freshman class in. We're going to fight for our spots. We're going to figure out how we're going to play, and we're going to go from there. I think you need a point guard. You can't, like, I love Jaden Akins. I don't think you can just say he's going to run the whole team and we're good with it. You need to go get a veteran in the portal. But I just think, I don't think there is a foundational piece, and I think that's okay. I think
you nailed it, man.
I think you just need to just start fresh and build how you build. I don't think anyone has a guaranteed spot. I think Marcus Bingham and Gabe Brown should have played more all year. I think a lot of that is that they didn't play well enough to play more all year. And then it's frustrating because at the end of the year, they showed how well they can play. But to be fair to not playing them, they weren't playing that well all the time. And it's hard to just, guys are talented, but you can't just play them. But I like them as pieces, even though they've kind of been up and down throughout their career. But they're also not guys who you're going to say, oh, well, they're going to turn into all Big Ten guys next year. They're good rotation players.
Yeah, I think from your – like, I like what they're potentially bringing back in terms of guys who can play, right? That can play at this level. It might need to be play better, and they're going to have a full offseason of development. But there's worse things than going into a year with a Gabe Brown, a Marcus Bingham, a Malik Hall, a Joey Hauser, a Julius Marble on your roster, right? As just like you got players, right? So. But in terms of like finding your identity, finding your, okay, who's going to be, who are the horses? I agree with you. This is time to rethink some things, be aggressive in the portal, try to find some real guys who can step in and be, volume minute, high production, high usage players. They got to get one or two of them. You need help in the front court. You need help in the back court. So
what kind of attrition, like, I think that's a big part of it too. 'Cause
it is.
It's not always the worst players on your roster that leave. Mm-hmm. I feel like there just has to be some outgoing movement on this roster, and who those players are kind of will shape your new team, right? Like, it's just, there's too many players playing this year, and I just can't see everyone just coming back and running it back. So I have to imagine their transfers, and then that puts whoever leaves, it puts the weight on whoever's next to them to really step up, right? And that will help shape what you have to go get. It'll help shape what you have. So I think that's the big question to watch really over these next few weeks, because, man, the portal is flying lately. People are going wild in and out, and I'm not even ready for that. It feels like the tournament hasn't even started, and we're up to thousands of people in the portal.
I have no idea how some of these programs are doing this right now, like, that are still playing. So say you're like the number 2 assistant, right, at like a decent high major or whatever. Right now, you're trying to coach your team through the NCAA tournament. You also have to have an eye on the portal, because if you need to be making contact with a kid you got to be ready. And there's like 40 names going in per day at this point.
And good names too.
Yeah, legit dudes. And then also the coaching carousel is going too. So guys are also fending calls on, what are you hearing about this? What are you hearing about that? What are you hearing about that? Where are you going? Where do you want to go? Like these guys, this shit is it's wild out there.
So 2 things though. One, if you're cutting your list and like actually moving toward a transfer decision right now, all you absolutely care about is shots, because you don't want to go to a winning team, because no winning teams are really that invested in recruiting in the portal right now. So you see guys so I do think like there's a group of players who probably wanted, like if you look at Michigan's transfers, it was very important that they went to schools that won games, right? Like they wanted to play in the NCAA tournament, and that's going to be what Michigan State's looking for too. Those guys aren't going to be rushing into decisions, and when Michigan State calls, Michigan State is going to get on the list. So I don't think you have to rush, because you don't want to rush through this, because more players are going to end up in the portal. So it's sort of a fine line between, if you're going out and getting the best guy in the portal on March 16th, well, all of a sudden in April, there's a guy who's way better who you didn't even know was going to come. So I think it's a balance, but I do agree it's a crazy time with all the evaluations.
Yeah. And I'm not saying you're setting up Zoom calls with kids in the portal right now.
But there are schools doing that.
But these guys, every program is paying attention to who is going to the portal.
I'm not saying they're not.
So there's just a lot. For Michigan State, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to kind of see how they tread in these waters. Right now, let's pull up the old scholarship chart. Right now, I think they're on the number, assuming that Aaron Henry goes with their 3-man class. That puts them at 13 scholarships. So, if they're looking to add a couple players, there's going to have to be some relatively notable attrition. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of kind of like speculating on which kids leave school, but
can we switch the subject a little bit? Because like obviously that'll come out in time and we'll see. But Joey Hauser, I feel like for that first 3 weeks, everything was sort of what we expected from Hauser, and then it all kind of just deteriorated. Where are you at with kind of where he's at as a player? What can he get to? I mean, so he's really a sophomore, right? He has sophomore eligibility potentially. I can't figure out his eligibility.
That's my understanding.
He'll have a medical year if he wants to use it.
In theory, he has 2 years left.
So, this wasn't the season anyone really expected
not what he signed
from him.
Up for.
Not 5 assists per game. I also think he's talented enough that you shouldn't just kind of throw in the towel and say, "Oh, this Hauser thing didn't work." Right? He's still a 6'9" guy who can shoot 38% from 3 and make shots and do all these different things. So I think this is a really interesting offseason for him, and I don't know what the pivot is, but I think there has to be a pivot that can get him to a more reliable Big Ten player. Maybe it's just having better, more consistent players around him. I don't know.
I mean, was any player on the Michigan State roster more adversely affected by the total lack of consistent point guard play than Joey Hauser?
That's fair. I'm really worried about him defensively, though.
Sure.
That's a huge issue in terms of if you're going to play a kind of a true pick and pop 4, not a small 4, but he's sort of in between of what he's a stretch big that plays the 4, not the 5, and he can't defend the 5 and he can't really defend the 4. And that's the big issue for me as far as how you kind of figure this whole thing out for him. Obviously, he's not really that playmaker where you can just say, "Oh, we don't have a point guard." So he would look great if Cassius Winston was there. I agree. But I think there's got to be something from him. You got to get more from him next year for Michigan State to take a leap, I think. I mean,
remember all that talk about we're going to play through Hauser in the high post and he can pass and he can do all that just never happened.
That's your island, man.
It wasn't my island. It was what I was being told. I wasn't sitting there scouting. I don't know shit. That's what I was being told. So, that's what I thought. And they had done it before. They have run that. They did it with Draymond. they've played through their offense through big man capacity. This was not
Joey Hauser is not Draymond Green.
He is not.
If we were buying any of that smoke, I don't know about that.
I wouldn't say I was buying that smoke, but I was saying I bought in the fact that he was going to be a guy that they actually ran stuff through, and we just never saw any of that formalized.
I don't know. I just keep looking. I think you need to get guys who can make plays with the ball on this roster. And the freshmen, maybe to a degree, but like Cormac or Max Christie is not really like a playmaker. He's much more, he'll be more comfortable if you had a point guard too, I think, at least his freshman year. I think the risk is, though, if you miss on a playmaker in the portal, it's sort of like a Rocket Watts situation this year, right? Like it's a very tough evaluation to say, okay, this guy can A, run an offense, B, he's good enough to play at this level, and C, he's not going to look for he's going to keep everyone involved. Like, it's very hard to find that player. And there's guys who are past first point guards, but they're not good enough. There's guys who just don't really get it. It's a tough thing to go say. It's easy to get like a 3-and-D wing in the portal and say, okay, you just kind of play good minutes and play defense. But you're talking about a guy who's going to be a lot of what this team is offensively. And that's just really tough, I think. And that's going to be the big risk.
And if the guy that you're talking about exists, or if a couple of them exist, they're going to have every school in the country after them.
But not always. Like Mike Smith, no one was really after him in the portal compared to some of these other guys, right?
That's a good point. I mean, if you're talking a low, I guess I was thinking more of like a transfer that would kind of be at this level, not like a guy coming from Ivy League. But to your point, that's fair. Like that identification is really, really difficult. That's like that works at like a 10% clip basically.
So you think Michigan State goes mid to like a mid-major up transfer, or if you're looking to the backcourt, or are you looking to try to find maybe a guy who played a medium-sized role at a high major and is looking for a fresh start?
Yeah, or a guy who had a large role who just wants to leave and have a fresh start. Like, I think it's so important to them that they get this right that I don't know if you can roll the dice on Mark Ostork or one of these, one of these guys who transfers into the Big Ten.
A guy who seemed to check all those boxes and then was just a very mediocre Big Ten player at best. And he was probably number 2 on the transfer ranking.
For sure. It was the Deron Simmons year. It was the same thing. It was these guys coming up that were supposed to be these huge splash guys, and it just never really happened, So, like, Mike Smith is the anomaly.
For sure.
So I think if you're Michigan State, when it comes to especially the point guard spot, a 3-and-D guy or a big guy, whatever, you can roll the dice like Minnesota with the Robbins kid, right? Like take a guy like that. But for the point guard spot, man, it's so important after what we just watched this year. You got to get someone that you're really, really confident in.
Yeah, I just worry.
And a player like that is what I mean. Like, Kentucky didn't have a point guard. they struggled at point guard play this year. Duke struggled at point guard. Like, all these major programs really struggled in that spot. So if there's a guy like that exists, it's going to be a run on him.
Yeah, that's fair. The other issue is guys who are transferring. If you're like really talented high major transfers, you worry they're sort of running from the fight, I think, a little bit. Like, are they going to be bought in, or are they going to be a me first guy? So that's the risk. Whereas the up transfers are probably more hungry to just win because they've lost most of their career, and they're also just not as good. So it's really a fine balance.
They're looking to be challenged.
The evaluation is a lot for these kind of like top 50 kids that are transferring after a year. Some of them are really good, and they'll end up like the best transfers. Like Juzang, I mean, he was basically that. He kind of fizzled out at Kentucky and then recreated his career at UCLA. But it's just a tough personal evaluation. It's just a lot going on. And again, we're still in a dead period. You can't bring these guys on campus. You can't do a lot of things. So it's going to be a wild time, I think, recruiting really across the country once this tournament ends. It's just going to be madness you got all these 5th-year guys who have their extra year. They want to use it somewhere else. So who knows? It's going to be fun to watch. The good thing is for Michigan State, there's going to be a lot of opportunities, a lot of options. It's it's not like you're going to say, man, no one came in the portal this year. There's going to be guys that you can go out and get. You're Michigan State. You have a top recruiting class coming in. You're going to probably have some transfers out, which will mean people will see opportunities. So I think that will help a lot.
Yeah, it's still a major brand that will be, Michigan State calls, anyone's going to listen, All right. Do you have anything else on the way out? You got any NCAA tournament takes you want to throw or anything like that before we boogie? It is currently 10:15 in the morning on Friday. So we're ready to dance in what? About an hour and 45 minutes?
2 hours, I think. 12:15
2 hours?
is the first game.
Okay.
I'm just glad it's here. It's been a long year.
It was
to get
fun last night, wasn't it?
From there. Yeah. And then the games weren't always beautiful. But just having games I'm all in on that. I'm not really feeling this Friday to Monday deal.
It's weird.
It's throwing me off. Like, it's still just not being there. Just the whole thing feels a little off to me, but I think today will really set it. Like, I haven't watched the tournament at home on TV in like a decade.
Right, exactly. I'll be curious to see what carries over from this year's tournament to future tournaments. Like, I could see
two impressors.
Oh, don't even. I could see I got the Sweet 16 Elite 8 going Saturday through Tuesday, or are they going Friday through Monday?
I think they're going to the similar schedule, right?
It's not what we're used to. It's not a Thursday through.
No, I think they're all
through Sunday.
Fridays, right?
Sweet 16. Yeah, Sweet 16 is on a Saturday for Sunday.
Oh.
Elite 8 is on a Monday, Tuesday. Like, I actually think that'll work. Because no one likes watching that Sweet 16 on the Friday night is always a pain in the ass. Although it's not like we're going out right now, so what the hell's the difference? But I wouldn't be surprised if that got carried over. What we've seen this week, I don't see this being carried over. I think people like the bracket, the playing games almost immediately. And then that Thursday morning is just such a staple of like the culture of college basketball. Right?
Yeah.
That Thursday, everyone plays hooky. It's the best day of the year. I don't think you want to mess with that.
I don't think they can really move in a normal year. You can't do that Saturday to Tuesday for the second weekend because the Final Four, you're basically like usually in a normal year, there'd be availability and stuff already like that Wednesday of that weekend. Or that week, right? So
I agree with you that the most important thing is availability.
But I'm just saying people are in like Final Four festivities start on Tuesday, Wednesday. People are already there. You need to have a Final Four by then. I think the difference is now everyone's in the same place, so they just want to get it done. So they want to make the Final Four closer to the Elite Eight, whereas usually they want to stretch that out. So I don't see that sticking around.
All right. I'll buy that. You can talk me out of it. We'll track that idea.
There you go. Hey, so I don't know. I'm just excited to watch some games today. It should be fun. I didn't notice anything. I know the gyms were mostly empty, but I still think that that's not going to have a big impact on these early rounds because it's not really a huge fan-driven event. It's not what makes the NCAA tournament, in my opinion.
I don't know. We'll see. I think it'll be an interesting topic to talk about on Sunday morning, right, when we record next.
Sounds good.
Is that right? Sunday morning, I'm assuming?
Yeah, Michigan plays Saturday, right?
Michigan plays Saturday. What's that, 3 o'clock tip?
3 o'clock, CBS, Texas Southern.
Texas Southern. Remember, how about this? Remember the kid I mentioned the other day? The kid from Texas Southern? He's going to the game. Texted me last night. Said he's in the building somehow.
There you go.
That's
that makes one of the three of us that will be at the game.
We'll be watching from afar. We'll be podcasting all together on Sunday morning for you fine folks. Or maybe Saturday night. Maybe we crack a beer and knock it out at 11 o'clock or something. So we'll talk to you then. Be sure to subscribe to UM Hoops. Be sure to subscribe to The Athletic. Be sure to pick up your NCAA tournament guide at CBB. Help me out.
CBBguide.com.
CBBguide.com. Not to be mistaken with, what's it? CBD? Guide.com would probably be very different. So make sure you go with CBBguide.com. Leave us a review in the iTunes store and tip your bartenders and your servers.